welcome to our latest webinar about award compliance. I think we've now done 3, haven't we, Carla, on workplace?
Yep, this is number 3. Lucky number 3.
Yes, and this time we're going to be talking about award compliance. I'll get the slides up in a second, but just obviously want to introduce you again to Carla Vinciullo, our workplace expert. Well over 10 years experience in big firm, working for big companies that are right at the tip of the spear. So really well placed for small business to help with all your workplace needs, whether it be, employment agreements, contractors agreements, advice, investigations or minimum wage, entitlements, all sorts of stuff to do with employment law. And the more and more that I've had to do with employment law, seeing some of the stuff that Carla has been advising clients, the more I've realised that we were, really the expertise is so needed in this area, and it's just a minefield for small business. And as we know, with small business, the buck stops with you as a small business owner, unfortunately, regardless of whether intention or anything else. This is a really making sure that you're on the right side, and as far away as possible from the red line as possible, just to make sure that you don't get hit with an audit or something of that nature where could be potentially really damaging to your business. So it's all really important stuff, and that's why we've kicked off with all these workplace seminars, just to get as much information for you as a small business owner from the workplace perspective. So I'll give it over to Carla now and take it away.
So good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining. Look, it wouldn't be a legal webinar if we didn't first just make the point that this is not legal advice. It's for general information purposes only. Every situation when it comes to a legal matter is unique, and the specific facts need to be considered. So just contact us if you have any questions or concerns that are particular and specific to your business and your staff.
Is that coming up now, Carla, with the slides? Can you see those?
Yep, looks beautiful. That's our cover page, so we can flick past the disclaimer onto the next one.
So you just go to the disclaimer real quickly. Today's webinar is just for information only, not for legal advice. So if you need legal advice, come to us. We're here for you. So just in the normal way, we always start the webinars like this. It's really important that we're just doing this to provide you with the general information, but every business is different, and every business needs tailored legal advice. So we'll get on to it. Thanks, Carla.
So I just want to start by quickly recapping what an award is. Look, I'm sure most of you have a general understanding of what an award, or a modern award as they're now called, is, but it's just really important to understand what they are before we get into the detail. So look, an award is a legally enforceable document. It's a document which sets out the minimum terms and conditions of employment which sit on top of the National Employment Standards and the provisions of the Fair Work Act. So modern awards contain specific entitlements such as rates of pay, hours of work, rostering arrangements, meal breaks, allowances, penalty rates, overtime, all of the big ticket items that you would expect to see, for example, in a contract of employment. Modern awards are really interesting sort of quasi-statutory documents. They run along either industry-specific or occupational lines. So what I mean by that is they are either industry-based. So, for example, the Hair and Beauty Industry Award covers that particular industry. Or they are occupation specific. So there are awards that deal with just one occupation in particular, such as for plumbers, for example. So traditionally,
within, say for instance, that health and beauty, give us some examples of what might be covered, under that award.
It's the hair and beauty industry, and under that particular award, so for example, in terms of workplaces, that'll cover everyone from a hair salon to a nail salon to an eyebrow, waxing, traditional beauty salon, a specific sort of skin or facial clinic. And what it's going to contain in that award, for example, is it's going to tell you all the different levels or classifications, which is another way of saying what the role is for the particular job. So you might call a staff member a beauty therapist, but under the award it will be a hair and beauty industry, level 1 or 2 or 3. And it's really important to make sure you get those classifications right, and that you also make sure that you look at the hours of work and all of the ins and outs to make sure you get it right.
And those levels are based on not just age, but perhaps experience and number of years doing what they've been doing and that sort of thing?
That's right. So you need to read the classifications really carefully, because it will matter what certification the person has, what training. Junior employees, include anyone up to 21 years of age. So they have different rates of pay, and it also deals with apprentices. So we should move on to the next slide.
Yeah, I've also noticed as well something that might be interesting when in those awards you can see that when they reach a certain age they move up to the next award. So when you've got to be really careful when your staff are a certain age and when they tick over to the next age bracket.
Well, if they're doing the same role, they won't change award, but as they increase in age, so if you have, say, an 18-year-old and they turn 19, yes, you need to make sure that not only do you say happy birthday and celebrate their birthday appropriately with some cake in the workplace, but make sure that you do have a look and make sure, they've got to have the revised rate of pay.
Yep, cool.
So look, it's really important to cross-check to the extent you haven't already, whether or not you are in a workplace where there is a relevant award, or perhaps even multiple awards. Don't assume that you are or are not covered by an award. It's really important to check. A modern award compliant workplace is not going to happen by mistake or by accident. You need to take very deliberate steps to make sure that you understand if an award applies, which award applies, who does it apply to, and then get into the detail to make sure, okay, am I complying with it? Am I paying the right rates? Am I paying the right overtime? When someone goes on annual leave, am I applying the 17.5% annual leave loading? Because that occurs in almost every award. And does your employment contract, if you have one, does it say all the things that the award tells you that the contract should say? It's really important. And what I'm going to do at this point is, my favourite thing to do in these webinars is just dispel a couple of what I sort of come across really frequently as being myths or misconceptions about the effect of modern awards, because it's these myths and these misconceptions and people who think they know the law but don't, which I see leading to non-compliance. Mythbusters 101. So look, the major misconception is the assumption that provided a company pays over award rates, it will have either met its obligations under the award, or that means it doesn't have to actually comply with the award. That's just completely wrong. It's false, not true, wrong. Paying over award rates will not ensure modern award compliance. There is much more to an award than paying the correct rate or paying a higher than minimum rate.
Mm.
So most awards contain really detailed rostering arrangements, overtime arrangements, different allowances, and the only way that you can get around that is if you take the appropriate legal steps to either vary or exclude them, and I'll talk about that in a moment.
Mm.
The second common misconception or myth is that managers are not award covered, white collar professionals are not covered, and anyone who's on a really high income, and let's face it, everyone's got a different view about what constitutes a high income, will not be covered by a modern award. Again, this is a really dangerous assumption that could lead to mistakes being made. The scope of award coverage has really changed since the Fair Work regime. So there's quite a lot of managerial, professional and clerical roles that perhaps weren't previously award covered now are. So look, even an engineer, a scientist, an IT professional, secretarial positions, sales managers who don't have anyone reporting into them, these are all potentially award covered roles now. So it's really important to check and get that right. Just want to make a really quick comment here that there are a range of mechanisms available in relation to modern awards for businesses to access to vary or exclude the operation of the award. These mechanisms can be complex, and I would suggest that you take legal advice if you're looking to vary or exclude award terms and conditions. So those mechanisms, in summary, are providing for an annualised salary arrangement, which needs to be appropriately documented in a particular way in a written contract of employment. It can occur through a high income guarantee of annual earnings, individual flexibility arrangements, and also negotiating an enterprise agreement. So in short, unless you're doing one of those particular processes in the correct and lawful way to vary or exclude a modern award, you need to comply with the award.
Yeah.
So look, it's really important just to bear in mind that almost every single year on the 1st of July, there will be a review undertaken by the Fair Work Commission to see whether, and if so to what extent, the national minimum wage should increase. This year it did increase by 3.3%. So this saw the national minimum wage jump up by $22 a week. Now, that applies to any body who is covered by the Fair Work Act and the National Employment Standards.
Across all awards.
Yep, and not just awards. So even if you have award-free and agreement-free employees, like many workplaces do, and you know, look, I'm an award and agreement-free employee, and yeah, it's important to make sure that you know that even for your award-free staff, the national minimum wage did increase. What's also relevant, as you'll see on the next slide, is that 3.3% increase also saw all of the minimum base rates of pay in modern awards jump up as well. So it's not just a minimum wage thing, it's also applicable to the base rates of pay in all 122 modern awards.
Wow.
It's also really important that if you're an employer in the fast food, hospitality or retail sector, penalty rates also potentially changed as well. So obviously there's been a lot of debate and conversation about Sunday penalty rates, and in these sectors, many of those rates have actually been reduced from the 1st of July 2017, but stay tuned because there's litigation on foot by some of the major unions in that regard.
Right. And are there years when the minimum doesn't change? So that has it been a year whether it's been zero?
Look, almost every single year in the history of Australian industrial relations, there's a national minimum wage case. And that occurred before the Fair Work Act, when we had the Workplace Relations Act, and even before that when we had the old Arbitration Act. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the presiding regulatory body sees fit to increase the national minimum wage. So it's not a done deal. There's actually a proper hearing that occurs every year and submissions made to see whether, and if so, to what extent the minimum wage goes up. And it's informed by things like inflation and CPI and all of that good stuff.
No doubt there's enough interested parties to make that case.
Sorry?
No doubt there's enough interested parties to make that case every year, so it happens.
That's right. So employer organisations, unions. Yeah, that's right. So let's move on to the next slide.
Yep.
So I just want to quickly recap some of the key takeaways. But before I do, I suppose I just want to make the general point, which is it's not only important to check that you're covered by an award, you've got to go to that next step and make sure that you really understand it, that you've actually read it, and that if you are covered, that you're appropriately classifying your employees. Now, Ian, you mentioned before, it's important to make sure you understand, the level of training that your staff has, so you make sure that irrespective of what their position description is and what you decide to call them in your business, that they're actually appropriately captured by the right classification in the award. Now, this is something that, money can't buy. You've got to really just look into the detail. And in the MasterChef George Columbaris example, what the sort of the kicker was for him, everyone thinks it's because he didn't pay, penalty rates, and that was true to a certain extent. But actually, the big issue for George was that he failed to classify people correctly according to the duties that they were doing. So it was this misclassification of staff, which a couple of managers who were new to the business identified that people weren't classified in the right way, which actually led to 162 employees being found to be underpaid an average of $16,000 each.
Over the course of the history of 10, 15 years?
I don't think it went back that far. There's a statute of limitations that still applies, but yeah, it spanned a number of years, and look, and it just racks up really quickly. This back pay liability, because you're liable for each and every breach. So every single time you work a shift and you're not paid the right amount, that's a breach. So you can see how the breaches just can rack up super quickly in a really small time frame, and then create this really serious back pay liability issue for employers, because you're never going to get out of paying your back pay.
These fines per breach as well?
Yeah, and so with the fines are up to $54,000 for a company per breach, and then if you're a sole trader or an individual, then you're looking at $10,800 per breach. That's up to. Now, what often happens in reality is that actually the courts see fit to say, okay, you've made an error. We'll just sort of package it all up and issue you this fine. It's pretty rare that you see someone fined $54,000, 12 or 15 or 35 times, but the reality is that it exists. Probably the biggest thing for a small business that can really sort of derail a small business owner is that, first of all, you're probably likely as a first step to have a Fair Work Ombudsman investigation. So that's someone from the government coming into your business, going through all your records and pay slips and rosters, if you have actually kept a record of that stuff, which you legally have to do under the Fair Work Act, and interrogating all of your data and sending you formal letters, sort of, government style, like Centrelink style, serious letters of demand saying deliver up all of your records and documentation, because I'm going to go through it with a fine tooth comb. So it just takes you out of your business.
Cost the business. Oh, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy.
Yeah, that's right. And look, there's also the bad press and reputational damage that can arise. I had a client back in April who, ended up featuring, in a newspaper in a, New South Wales regional town, talking about how they had underpaid university students working in a particular cafe. What I would say there is be really careful about talking to the media to defend yourself. If you do have press coming to you and asking you about underpayments and things like that, it can be really tempting to sort of go out and defend yourself and defend your business and say, I'm a good boss and, I always pay people well. But you might actually end up inadvertently saying the wrong thing and making a legal admission in a public forum, as one of my previous clients did, where he said that it was essentially okay to not give people meal breaks and pay them their full rate if he was giving them free food. Sort of an innocent mistake in some ways, but yeah, really important to make sure that you do get some legal advice if you're unsure about these modern awards and how they might impact on you and your business.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a workplace investigation or a letter of some sort, I think just be that's the point where you need to be seeking this legal advice straight away before going any further, just to get make sure you know what your legal rights are and get your ducks in a row, any advice that you need.
Yep, that's right. So that basically brings us to the end of today's webinar. Look, like Ian said at the start, it can be a landmine, and you have to know what you don't know, and it's okay if you don't know too much about modern awards. They're not the most exciting things in the world, but they are really, really important to make sure you're complying.
Either they're not easy to read, and even when I recently was having to look over an award, I was finding it very difficult to work out exactly, and even legally trained, qualified, experienced, although not in this area, I haven't found it very difficult to work out exactly what the true position was. So even just having a lawyer just explain it to you and let you know what you need to do, or even just run through, I've looked through the award. I just want to run over a couple of quick questions just to make sure that I'm classifying these employees in the right way, and be able to ask you that. I think that would be really, I found it useful being able to ask you, what do you think about this and this, and you being able to help me through that. So as a client, and also, it's really helpful to know, that you can actually get someone to explain what this stuff really means, because they're not easy to read.
Yep, that's right. Exactly. So I think that's probably time. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you got something out of that, and feel free to email me or call me if you have any question, big or small. Very happy to help.
Yeah, great. This is the first webinar we've done. We've done it under half an hour, so high five to us. It's the first time we've been able to do it. We're really trying to make these things short and sharp. But if you have any questions, here's Carla's contact details here. If you want to give her a call or email, or myself for any other stuff. We do structure, intellectual property protection, legal agreements, dispute resolution. So for a growing small business, there's not really much that we can't do for you as a business owner. We give strategy calls, complimentary strategy calls as well, just to break the ice and make sure that you can get your advice without being feared for being charged for it. So we're all about helping small businesses in Australia and helping protect you guys, because we're a startup ourselves. We're a small business when we understand the pains and pressures and consequences of doing business. So, all right, guys, thanks very much. Have a great day. And thanks, Carla, for all your great insight and knowledge. I'm sure everyone really appreciates it.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.